Right. Just while Ian is he said his password, I thought we'd just go back to basics and let's do a bit of a lecture. Well, we're in a lecture theatre. Let's just go back. So, why do we use lectures? They are, one of the most widely used teaching methods in higher education. It's a cost-effective way of teaching large groups of students. Me stood at the front talking to you. I can give you loads and loads of information. It can be things around extra background information, delivering basic concepts, modelling information. I could be giving you information that's not yet published, confidential information. So it's quite a good way of doing that. I can communicate my enthusiasm for the subject to you, and it's also something that's still expected by students. You ask incoming students what they expect from university, one of the things they'll tell you is, I get a lecture. So there is some expectation. But if you look at literature, they are beginning to get criticised. It's quite a behaviourist model, an active tutor, a passive student or a passive learner. They do rely on students concentrating for large periods of time. And Bly talks about the fact that students concentrate at the beginning, there's a lull in their concentration, they forget about concepts that's delivered mid-lecture, which are usually the critical parts of a lecture, and the concentration span increases again towards the end and you're concluding. So that's an issue. And they tend to lack opportunities for students to actually process or actually engage in some way with the material that you're presenting to them. Should we go back to the poll? It should be working now, so if you go to pollev.com/irglover, you should be able to see it now and just fill it out. So as an icebreaker, I think it's a bit late, to be honest. I think the ice has melted, but we'll just try it anyway since I spent ages setting it up. I think the ice might be coming back because it was warm everywhere else but in here.
Okay, so it's pollev.com/irglover and hopefully it's working. So this one is just, a text.
What you've done.
We'll skip this. Forget this ever happened. We'll edit it out the video and everything, and we'll just move on. We'll do it right at the end for the really keen people who stay, which I don't think is going to be many right now. We'll come back.
Right. We're giving some background information.
Now here's a great example of how to do it, honestly.
Right. So Ian's now going to talk about making a boring lecture more active.
Just keep getting things wrong, I think, is the main thing. So what we've got are a few different ways that you might add some interactivity to a lecture. So, as Stuart said, students are expecting lectures. You're going to be timetabled in lectures. There's no getting around the fact that some of your activity is going to be taking place in lectures. So these are some ways that you might bring some of that interactivity back into it. So one thing is back channel. Have people heard of back channel? Okay, so back channel is just a kind of semi-official communication stream that's kind of running in the background, hence the name, and in that students can record their questions and comments, other students can then answer it, people can contribute and share ideas and stuff while the lecture's going on. So you see quite a lot in conferences as well where people will be tweeting, for instance, about what's being said in the presentation, but you can also use it in lectures. So a few different ways. Twitter, for instance, Facebook groups, you can do the same thing. So again, discussions in there. Blackboard, you could do. You could have the students contribute to a Blackboard discussion while it's going on. An interesting thing is self-tweeting slides. So as you're going through your slide deck, every time it advances, it could tweet out a question to the students. So the ones who are doing this back channel stuff, they can actually, that pops up, they can make an answer to that. Or you can prompt them for other types of information, and then you dip into it and answer the questions as they come up. But that's the technology side. We wanted to show you some ways that you could do it without technology as well. And one way that you could do it would just be post-it notes. So, for instance, hand out a load of post-it notes to the students or bits of paper. At the end of each section, they move, they pass them along to the end of the line, and then you just collect them in and read them out, answer the questions as they come. So, quite a basic way of doing it, but you can still get some of that kind of questioning, that two-way interaction going on. Okay, checking understanding. So while you're going through the lecture, and as Stuart said, people's attention levels just kind of drop halfway through. So one way to raise them back up is to ask them questions. Now, how have you found it? Have you got, are you understanding this? Are the concepts making sense? How does it tie in with previous things you've learned? All that kind of stuff. The things that, the questions you want to ask them. Now you can just prompt with questions and then move on. But with technology, and also without some technology as well, you can just gather that information back in. So you can ask a question, find out what the students think, have they got the concept that you've been trying to get across, and then if they haven't, you can address it. Or if you're using text ones, you can see the questions that are coming up and you can address them as the lecture's going on. So rather than all of the students leaving the room saying, I have no idea what that was all about, you can be addressing that as you go along, and hopefully they won't all be doing that. So some of the ways that you can do it, one that you almost saw, well, you saw the login screen anyway, is Poll Everywhere. So on there you can create the questions, prompt them to the students, they respond, and then you can get these graphs and charts and results of what they voted. Similarly, Socrative, which I think someone was talking about earlier on.
Michelle Blackburn, so you might have played with it already this afternoon.
Very similar system. Again, it's you asking questions, students using their technology to respond to you. Turning Point is another one. The thing about that one is there's a few lecture rooms in the around the university. They've got these Who Wants to Be a Millionaire type clickers. They're built in into some of the lecture rooms. So Turning Point is the one that uses that. So that's another technology for doing the same thing, electronic voting. Back channel. So again, the things I've just spoken about, Twitter, Facebook, you could just check and respond based on that. So ask the question through Twitter and then respond. But without technology, these are really old methods of doing it. Hands up. Hands up, who thinks that? Has anyone got a problem with something? All that kind of stuff. So just holding up cards, holding up coloured pens, whatever it might be, and pausing for questions. Okay? Pause for a question. Does anyone use pauses for questions? Yeah, it's a standard thing to do. But with the time pressure, you just tend to kind of rush through it. So just making that time available to pause for questions, to check if the students have got the concepts that you're trying to pass on to them. Okay, discussion and debate. So this is something we're going to come into in a moment. We're going to try and simulate a bit of a discussion that you might try. We'll see how that goes based on what happened earlier. But putting the students into groups, which is what we're going to try and do in this, this mountainous room. Hopefully no one will fall down or anything. Put you into groups to discuss a topic or a question. Now that might just be, without technology, just having a chat, and then each group feeding back to the whole room. So just like you were doing a seminar, you can do similar things. But equally, you can make notes on paper and get a spoken summary from the group. But with technology, you can actually spread it out and encourage students to not just have a look, and jot down their information, their thoughts, the group's thoughts, but you can start pulling in and encourage them to look for outside viewpoints as well. So recording points in a shared Google Doc. So all students and all staff have got access to Google Apps. So in there you can have collaborative editing of documents. You could use that for the students to record notes, to put links in. And then from that they can actually build up a resource to use in their debate. Padlet, again, that was something that some people have been showing earlier on in the day. Padlet, if you haven't seen it, is kind of a pin board where people can put different ideas, like post-it notes as well, and cluster them, move them around, and just jot down ideas, put images in there, and then cluster them around concepts or whatever it might be, just to, in this particular use, to gather together some ideas that you might then use to inform your discussion and your debate. And as I said, everyone's got Google Drive, Google Docs. There's presentation software in there, collaborative presentation. So again, people could be producing a presentation together while they're in the lecture, then getting up and presenting it back to the rest of the group. So you can have 2 minutes for a group to put together a few slides on something, and then have everyone come back and present. It all depends on what you're trying to do. Okay? Okay,
so as Ian said in the previous slide, we're going to try and get you to engage in some kind of debate discussion activity. So what we want to try and do is split the room into two, and where possible we'd like you to move around just to get a feeling for what it's like to sit in different parts of this lecture theatre, because you probably get a very different experience sat down here from what you get up there, particularly as it's almost a vertical room. So can we split this side of the room from, like Sue's actually in the middle, into the for, and this side of the room into the against the lecture? If you really are passionate about one or the other at this stage, feel free to move around. But like I say, don't just simply move to the left or right, move up and down as well. So if we can move you into the fors and the againsts. Yeah. Yeah. You can either group together, but you can then split up into subgroups within those areas. Right.
Basically, you're going to be chatting, so
you will be chatting.
Get into a situation where you can chat. So it might be smaller groups, or it might just be one big group.
Are you staying here or going to the side? Just because it's got URLs on the back. Sorry? Yeah, you can do. Good, I've got movement. Alright, cheers. Yeah? Yes, you can do. Then they can fight for the orange card. Wait.
Pardon, you're against. You can join the four if you want. You can go off to the fourth side if you want. Well,
then what I want you to do is swap with Helen and then bring all the green ones over here. Okay, right. Now you're in your kind of areas. It is going to be both a discussion and an active, an online piece of activity. So, what we're going to do is we're going to give you 5 minutes to argue whether you're for the lecture or against the lecture. Now, obviously you're in discussion groups, so you can discuss it, but what we want you to do is to record any information that you wish to record about your motion on the relevant Google page. So, again, you can do it, or you can either work together as one big group, or you can split yourselves into little groups and work on the same document. But it's a good way to show you how small groups can be working collaboratively on the same document and coming up with and developing an argument in that particular way. So hopefully at least a few of you in each of the groups can get onto these Google pages and and start to argue your motion. Well, lots of noise, lots of activity, and lots of information on the Google pages. And we watch. We haven't got a Google page for that, so you can write an either or.
It should be written on the back of it. It won't let you, is it asking for a login or something? Yeah.
Have you?
The address doesn't work. Okay.
That's not working.
I'll just open it up on there and see what.
It should be editable. Are you for the lecture?
Yeah.
I just need to find out something stupid.
Should be. It's not editable. Well, it's not editable. Should be editable.
Okay.
Alright, you're allowed to.
The other one, is it I's or L's or what's Stuart?
Where do we edit?
They're L's, I think.
L's.
Oh, what's happening here then?
Okay, if you're on the against section, you can't get in. Think these are lowercase L's. So try that. If they're not, then try uppercase I's.
Right, let's have a look. That's a good idea. I'm just going to...
Yeah, capital C, capital P, T, L to I.
Right, we're going to just check this.
Very good. Yeah, lowercase l.
No, I don't. It should be.
Right. So we can.
We like lectures, but we don't do them traditionally. Yeah, we will. We're getting a group consensus on this. We like doing it. Group mix. Sorry? Yes. We like doing what we do. I like it 200 people. Right, everybody, pretend to be a polymer. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Right, try...
Yeah. Is it not? Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Actually, because we tried that as an I and an L, but it worked.
She was just changing them, is doing it. It was just so that everyone could access it but not change it, but now it should be.
Right, okay.
If you just refresh, it should be possible to change it now. No, is it not? Sorry.
Do you want to try it now? Hopefully we should have resolved that.
Okay, if we just try going back.
The links are on the back of the card, so if you just want to try it, well, I've got...
Is it working over? Is it working for you?
Yeah, but can you... Oh, you can edit it, alright, yeah, so it's just I'll have to refresh again. Right.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Right, should be resolved now. Apologise for that.
No, you should be able to edit there now.
Alright.
Okay, probably just took a little while for it to...
Right, which...
You'll need to log in with Shoe account. Do you know the details for that?
You should be in.
It's your...
Yeah, no, they're all in on that side.
Well, yeah, you have a university account, so it's your...
No,
Yeah,
I meant that rather than...
yeah. So, you need to put at my.shoe.ac.uk, so that's...
First person that works the scribe.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry about that.
Good lectures, not traditional lectures.
You need your shoe one.
Do you?
Yeah, it's only set for shoe people. You put your username at my.shoe.ac.uk and
You're not in?
to the right place.
That's interesting. Is this a borrowed one?
Yes, it is. Which username? Just that HWNC3 exchange or
I thought to set it up so that...
is it?
I know.
You will be in a second.
What's the URL for this one?
What about password?
Have you got any problems? They should be anonymous. Oh, it's because he's changed the... They should have been anonymous, but it's had to make it so you have to log in.
I'm just going from Google, but perhaps I should be doing it somehow.
No, that should be okay. You should be able to get through there. So CTT-IWLEF, that should be fine. Is it not doing it?
No, that's what's coming
Oh,
up.
that's what it comes up.
Google.
If you, can you just go in, is it, have you got Safari on there? Can you just go into Safari
Well, it's
itself?
funny now without...
The web
I don't know why
browser.
it was wanting...
The compass.
I'm working from
So, is it not?
No, it's just giving you Facebook.
So if you put it in where it says facebook.com, it should be.
click edit.
Click edit and you can just start putting in your thoughts there, yeah.
So what am I putting wrong here now?
It's a lowercase l at the end, not a 1. It's not a very good address because it's...
So that's an L. H.
That's an I, uppercase I, that's a lowercase l.
Okay, we'll give you another 2 to 3 minutes just to get something down. Just when we've got a Google Doc active up there, what you'll notice is, does everybody use Google with the students in any way? Yeah. Well, if you don't, what you'll notice is, if you actually log in with your account, it'll come up to tell you who's actually actively working on that page at the same time as you, so you can see if they're logged in. You've got Peter, I'm not sure, and Francesca. If they're not logged in, they come up as anonymous things like pumpkins or koalas, which is quite fun. But what's also interesting, and this is quite useful if students are working on a Google Doc remotely, is that they can also open a chat window, and as well as collaborating on the document, they can also have a discussion going on at the same time as well. But that's just an aside. Well, we'll give you another couple of minutes to continue with your... The links are... Do you want the for or the against? Well, one could have the for. That's the against. And then we've got a for. All these stairs. And if you want the for, I'm giving until 25, so let's get some stuff down.
To get onto Google stuff, you need to put that I. What that'll do is it'll take you through to the standard login page for shoe stuff, and then you just log in there as normal. So it's like my page. Oh, sorry. It's a username. Yeah, rather than the actual username of my page.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. Well, it depends which track it is. Was it track 1?
The problem is,
Standard. So this is the standard. Standard.
Okay, I think at this point I should actually have a bell to stop this going on, but I don't actually have one, so I'll shout. So we'll give you a bit of time to kind of argue your motion online. So the next 5 minutes is, again, working in the same kind of groups and split room as you are. If you log in then to or if you visit the opposite Google document and then read the opposing argument and refute and comment. So what we want you to do this time is just spend 5 minutes or so looking at the opposing argument, and in Google just use the, can't find it now. Just use the comment functionality to comment, either to refute or to have further comments to the opposing argument, and then we'll give you, we'll give you maybe 5 up to 10 minutes, depending on how much time and how much engagement you've got with this. So again, like I said, 5-10 minutes to just look at the opposing one. You need obviously the URL. And the URL for it would be. So these are the URLs if you want the 4-1.
So having it up on there. Yeah, we can put that up. Once people get logged into the opposite one, we'll put that up.
Against URL. Yeah, we'll have QR codes next time.
If you are now it's going to be
Just type in. It's only just a fun activity.
You're going into the other one, so you were against before, now you're going into the document for the for report, and just hopefully not putting in your rebuttals to what they've said. So you see the little speech bubble?
That's the one.
Yep. So just highlight the bit you want to comment, press the speech bubble. Okay.
Comment on the whole document.
You should be able to select a section. You might need to go into desktop version.
The desktop.
Yeah, so here, use desktop.
Oh, right, okay.
Just try that. Eventually when it comes back. Okay. But it's you just select the bit and then there's a speech bubble type, comic book speech bubble. You just use that. Okay.
If you've not got commenting functionality on your mobile device, just simply just edit it in any way whatsoever. If you want to shout across the room, that's fine. It's just a fun activity. It's not meaning, we're not going to do anything with this information. So it's just really as an opportunity to try some technology out in the lecture theatre.
Can we pass it on? We're going to complete that as well. It's part of James watching the traditional lecture. They're just things that make a hard lecture. They're not reasons to do a lecture. They're not reasons to do a hard lecture. I agree. If I went to a lecture with all these things happening in it, it's a shit lecture. Don't do these shit things. It is a great lecture. I'm now. I've not even been. I've not had a drink for 5 days.
Oh, you were in it by January.
Well,
Was it the building? That outside the gym used to be an outside the door, now it's inside the door.
I'll just give you another minute or two just to finish off any comments you would actually type into the documents. I've probably done the worst thing possible if this was an actual lecture with students, because they'll be typing any stuff in there, just so that, once one starts, then they'll all be typing anything. It shouldn't be. Okay, we'll move forward. So, thank you for that so far. So, the next bit is just to go back to your original argument, original motion, and just have a look at any comments that the opposing group have posted in your original document. I'll just give you 5 minutes to have a look at those and just...
Can you put the photos on screen, Stuart?
Again,
Yeah, it just saves all the hassle of not getting the
oops, I've got against twice. Is the text big enough? Tell me if you want me to scroll. Let me point. When you're ready for scrolling. Which one? Tell me when to stop. There. Going on this one. Okay, so again, this is really just a sample activity, just to show you some things that might be possible in an actual active lecture. And just thought it might be useful if anybody just wants to say anything about either the activity or whether you've actually got some particular strong views, whether you are for a traditional lecture, against a traditional lecture. If there's anything you want to say, we'll just give you a minute or two to respond back generally. Yep.
Anyone wants to know about traditional lectures, just watching him talk about Eric Mazur, I'm sure you a lot of Untitled people have come across him, and he comes out with some words of ingredients, but words of stupidity at the same time.
Right.
So he talks an awful lot about lecturers and lectures should be called sacked, because his latest one. Lecturers should record their lectures, put them as videos, and then sack the lecturer as abusive content. But equally, his peer instruction model works really well. So on the topic of lecturers, read his stuff, but also disregard anything you think is utter nonsense.
Right. Thank you.
There, got it off my chest.
Okay. Well, if there's no... Yes, sorry.
We were just talking about the back channel. Sorry, and we were also being very candid, so we weren't paying attention. So someone out there may have been just saying exactly this. Apologies. So we were talking about the back channel, talking about how distracting it can be. In some situations, we've seen it presented alongside the Twitter channel, whatever, alongside the presentation, or in an online webinar. You get a back channel there, and you've got a presenter doing sterling stuff right down the middle using the presentation mode, and you've got a back channel there. It's quite an interesting dynamic, but for some people, the back channel becomes the main event. Whereas actually, you're all attending because it's got X's name on the session and I suppose there's all sorts of potential, but also all sorts of problems with that integration of the back channel. Any comments you've got on how to manage it?
Ian, have you got any comments? Is it there, chatting away, back channeling himself?
Back channel. I think you have to find your own particular way of dealing with it. Different people are going to have different ways, so it might be that rather than having it up, synchronously, it's there all the time. Just after a particular section, go back to it, have a quick look through, and go through a few of the points that are there. It's still there for people who've got their own device to look at whenever they want to, but as for having it up on screen all the time, for some people that'll work really well. It can actually prompt them into different directions with the materials that they're going to cover, but for most people, I think, keep it behind the scenes and manage it more and just address it at certain points, at kind of fixed points.
But maybe following on what you're saying, maybe it's about being purposeful with it, not just running it.
Oh, definitely.
There for a reason, make sure everyone's clear about it and trust people to use it productively.
Definitely, and that's why the self-tweeting slides are a really good way, because at certain points it's going to put out a tweet that you can use to direct the discussion. essentially in that back channel. Obviously you can't control it, but you are going to be directing it a little bit more through that.
Okay, well, got ears on there. So just finally then, before we move into, I think Ian's final activity, let's just go back to a nice traditional piece of technology, and just for fun, whatever, if you're for or against, just hold up whatever the red pepper. Oh, it's a green pepper, red tomato, wasn't it? So, oh, we've got some against. Oh, I tell you what, I think there's more against in this room.
I think they might be against the traditional lecture in the traditional way, aren't they?
No, we're saying against the traditional lecture in that way. No, we're not saying get rid of lectures altogether, because we can't, because they've just built this. So, okay, thank you very much.
Nobody changed their mind.
Okay, so one other thing that people have been using are, just as you're about to leave the lecture, you can kind of push all of this out of your head. Students are off to the pub or to a cafe or whatever just to socialise. But one thing that works really well is right at the end having a bit of a semi-formal reflection on what they learnt in that particular session, and how it integrates with their previous learning. So we have Pebble Pad, which is perfect for this, which is a reflective space portfolio. But also, Google Forms is really good for just creating a very quick form that people can fill out, just jot down a few ideas, and then you can make that open for everyone to see and gather people's thoughts and collate a lot of information through that, and everyone can look and see what other people put in there. So just ideally, if you can go to that Google/Forms address and just put anything in there. Just have a play, see how it works. Google Forms is part of the Google Drive that everyone's got access to. It's really quick and easy to use to create any kind of form. You can make the responses anonymous, you can make them public so everyone can see the collated data. So if you just want to try it out and see what it looks like from the point of view of a person who is submitting a form, then once you've submitted, you get a link, or it's also on there. You can go see the responses that other people put in there. So it's a great way just to get people to think about the stuff that they've just learned in that particular session and try and integrate it in their wider learning.
Question.
Yeah.
Are students, the information we've got, the research we've got shows that students don't take note of the feedback. How do we know that they're going to take note of that? What's the evidence?
That they're going to actually fill in the survey.
Would they go back to it immediately? I'm just sort of thinking about all of us are so stressed and busy, and we're all trying to do everything, and it's like, if it's like feedback. Why do we give students feedback when they just want the mark, or we want them to progress? But why do we bother asking for their reflections if they're not going to respond? I'm being cynical.
But with this, we're not particularly looking, for their reflections to respond,
No,
but for their own purposes. So encourage them to reflect on their learning for their own self to look back on. Just even the process of it.
What is the statistical evidence to prove that students are willing to do that when we know that they're not willing to pick their feedback up?
Mm-hmm. Statistically,
Yeah.
I have no idea, but I know that anecdotally we have lots of places around here that have introduced reflection, and in some places it works. It fits in a lot more with some disciplines. You can use reflection anywhere. Most people are reflecting all the time when they're in their professions and stuff, but as formal reflection, it fits in really well with certain disciplines. So in a few places we have really embedded reflection, and there the students get so much out of it. Obviously that's anecdotal, there's no statistics in that, but if you can explain the benefits of some kind of semi-formal reflection to the students, if you explain it well, if they get it, they will do it and they will benefit from it. That's what we've seen. But as I say, statistically, I don't have that information. Yeah.
And also, even though it's like the lecture, that I think what we've had is debating about the lecture without a clear definition of what we're debating as a lecture. And for me, reflection how I would teach reflection and engage with reflection in my subject area
Yeah.
is probably very different to my colleagues over in bioscience.
Definitely, yeah.
You with me? That we may not want to do that because we have just a face-to-face discussion in a particular way.
But this is just one
Yeah.
possibility that just as the students are leaving, you can put something up, it takes them 30 seconds to do it. If you set it up in Google Forms, you can set it up so it emails them back. If you use PebblePad, it's recorded for them. They can go back, it's there. So it's just about capturing that stuff just as they're leaving the room. The things that they might forget as soon as they've walked down the street a little way.
I can see from the title of the book, you might not have understood. It's very different.
You ask students to write a business note on their way out.
Yeah.
Flip chart. Yeah. That's why you do that.
So the advantage with this is you can see their reflections, but reflection obviously is a very personal thing. So you can set it up so that it's completely private and it's just a prompt for them to think about later on. Now, you can't force them to do it. Yep. Yep.
Which is probably going to be quicker for me.
You could do that, and then you
Then
could.
that's because I'm used to doing photography.
Sorry. Okay, so this was a really kind of Mickey Mouse survey or reflective thing. But you can see that it's automatically pulling out some of the data that you might want to capture. So you might have a general form that you use for every session. You might have specific things that you do for a particular lecture. So it's an easy way for you to capture information, but you can also make it so that this information goes back to the students and they can see what they thought and how it would integrate, how the new knowledge integrates into previous knowledge. Okay, so I think we're just about out of time, so that's the end of the session. We'll make sure these slides are available because there are links and things that you might find valuable in there, references, some further information. Stuart and my contact details are up there, but we've got a few minutes for questions, haven't we?
Yeah, a couple of minutes.
Yeah, a couple of minutes. So if there are any questions or comments that you want to throw out, please do. And if not, thank you for taking part.
Can we have our iPads back?
Yeah, can we have the iPads back?
And there's some references as well.